It's Dump Month, where every movie sucks except for one, and it's Spider-Man. That one was fantastic.
You should pause and go watch that video right now and then come back to this one.
But speaking of man, let's talk about Wolfman.
So one of the cool things that this movie does is it has a very interesting perspective change. Obviously, from the title of the movie, there's a Wolfman in this. And one of the things that happens is you see the main character transform throughout this movie. And as he's doing so, you see everything that he sees. He can see in the dark. He can hear things that you wouldn't normally hear. He starts losing the ability to understand people, and physically, he starts losing parts of his body. I thought this was a really cool concept that was underutilized a bit in the movie. I think they could have shifted to that perspective a bit more often and built some tension with that.
To that point, I think a cool perspective shift would be to see him hunt while in his own perspective. They don't really give you that. But ultimately, this whole perspective doesn't have any sort of payoff, and that's kind of the theme of the movie. It's about presenting you with something and having no payoff later.
One example is that with his heightened sense of hearing, he's able to hear the spider upstairs, and it's crawling up the wall, and it sounds like loud thumps to him. However, nothing else seems to sound that loud to him. His own footsteps are fine. His family sleeping in the other room is fine. Everything outside, they're in the middle of the wilderness, and everything else seems to be a normal volume, but he can kind of pick and choose what's loud. It's very inconsistent. Another thing is they barricade the door at one point. They make a huge show of taking the shelf and moving it over to the door, and it's big and heavy, and they disassemble some of the shelf pieces and hammer them down to the floor so that it doesn't move when it's being rocked, which is a good idea in a horror movie, a very good idea. But then the door's never attacked again, so why even do that in the first place?
Special kudos to the special effects team though. There weren't a whole lot of special effects in this movie, but the look of the werewolf, the blood, the gore, the arm scratches, things like that looked really well done. So gotta give them kudos for that. But my biggest gripe in this whole movie has to come down to the overall writing, the story, the directing choices, and I think that all fumbled down to creating some poor acting in this movie as well. I almost want to say the actors could perform better than what they are, but I felt like the writing and directing limited them quite a bit. The main issue with the writing is that the storytelling was probably the most predictable I've ever experienced in a movie. They also spent, I think, way too much time in the beginning and in the city than they did with the actual plot of the story. I thought about almost probably the first quarter, third, maybe half of the movie could have been cut out and they could have started from there. Some of the directing choices where they had people stick their heads out as if they're confidently looking around even though they know they're being attacked was a little odd to me. No one felt a little suspicious, especially in the beginning. The choice for the people to be able to fall asleep at night despite all the stress going on, that seemed a little bit odd to me as well.
And it happened multiple times. It wasn't just one time that they fell asleep. They kept falling asleep while things were going on around them.
Overall, there was just a bunch of strange choices and weak writing, and you made a good point about that.
Yeah, I wonder how much of this writing has to do with the writer's strike from last year. It seems like timeline-wise that this was probably affected by that, and why it's just overall very weak.
And to sum things up, I thought the music was just overall distracting. It at many times didn't make any sense to me.
Though it didn't help that we were doing an IMAX experiment where we were in one of the front rows right in the center. So we were being blasted with the music like constantly. The loudness that we experienced is not what we're judging here, but there were weird points where the music just kind of oddly came out of nowhere.
Now let's go into recommendation time. What say you?
I do not recommend this movie. I think it's very inconsistent. I don't know why it's showing as big as it is. I think Universal just put a lot of money behind it, but it's nothing special. You?
don't go to this movie. Don't even watch it on streaming. It's not worth your time. Universal, I think, did put a lot into the marketing of it. That seems to just be Hollywood's strat. So let's spend little money on the movie and a lot of money on the marketing. And I don't think that's a good payoff.
What's your score?
My score is a 3 out of 10, which is one of my lowest, my second lowest ever, I believe. So that says a lot. So I think there's some things to give credit towards, which is just, I mean, the acting was still fine, but I don't know. The writing and directing just did such a bad job, and the music was just terrible. So it's a bad movie. What's your score?
I gave it a 2 out of 10.
Fair
so
enough.
very similar. I didn't care for the acting at all. I thought it was very inconsistent, just like the rest of the movie. So it's consistently inconsistent, but the main actor, who's the dad, was a much better wolf man than he was a dad. But he's a dad for most of the movie. So I don't know. I didn't really care for this movie. Easy skip, easy pass.
So like we said in the beginning, and now that you completely wasted your time here, go watch Better Man. It's a way better movie. It's
so
fantastic.
Good. It's so good. So just remember, we're two
Regular dudes doing regular reviews. Okay, I'll just say it.
Go on.
It's not enthusiastic at all.
I'll take you anywhere.
And that's
Take
why
a
it's
look.
called Cliffhanger.
It's in a book.
Reading Rainbow.
And with that, just remember, we're two regular dudes
Doing
didn't
regular
say it with me.
reviews. Too late.
Didn't say it with me.
Okay. Sorry, you just zoomed and I wasn't ready, man.